Imagine being told you aren't allowed to attend your own sister's wedding. Every detail, every smile, every celebration, you're told you have no place there. The hurt, the frustration, the anger, it would crush most people. But what if I told you that being excluded wasn't the end of the story? What if that very moment of rejection became the spark for the most unforgettable twist of the day? A moment that no one saw coming and that changed everything in an instant. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey of patience, cleverness, and a perfectly orchestrated plan. You'll feel every emotion, the shock, the suspense, the thrill, as you witness how what seemed like a punishment became an opportunity, how absence turned into presence, and how a single gift transformed a day of exclusion into a moment of unforgettable triumph. By the end of this story, you won't just hear about revenge. You'll experience the power of strategy, timing, and the emotional satisfaction that comes from turning adversity into your greatest victory. Stay with me, because every detail matters, every reaction counts, and the ending is something you'll never forget. The first keynote, the ban, is the foundation of the entire story, and its impact runs far deeper than just a simple refusal to attend an event. Being banned from my sister's wedding felt like being erased from a moment that should have been shared by family, a moment meant to celebrate love and unity. I remember the day vividly, the air heavy with anticipation, the house buzzing with preparations, dresses being measured, flowers being arranged, and guests confirming their attendance. And yet, in the midst of all that excitement, my presence was declared unwelcome. The announcement didn't just sting, it struck like a blade of betrayal, slicing through the fabric of trust I had in the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. It wasn't a casual exclusion, it was a deliberate, conscious decision, one that carried the weight of judgment and the implication that I was somehow unworthy of being part of such an important milestone in my own family's life. The sense of injustice was immediate and overwhelming. I wasn't just being left out of a celebration, I was being publicly humiliated, sent a message that my feelings, my bond with my sister, and even my very existence in the eyes of my family could be dismissed. And yet, beneath the anger and hurt, a strange clarity emerged. The ban became more than a restriction, it became a canvas on which I could paint a response that was carefully measured, precise, and unforgettable. In that moment, I realized that being barred from the wedding did not mean being powerless. It meant that whatever I chose to do next, every action could carry an amplified weight, every gesture could speak louder than words. The very act of exclusion set the stage for an opportunity that no one anticipated. It became a silent fuel, igniting a determination to ensure that my absence would not go unnoticed, that my mark on the day would be indelible, and that the family's attempt to control the narrative would be overturned in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. The ban, painful as it was, became the spark for planning a surprise that would change the dynamics forever, turning humiliation into triumph, and making what initially seemed like rejection into the ultimate stage for vindication and shock. The second keynote, feeling of injustice, is an emotion that cuts deep, raw, and persistent, shaping every thought and decision leading up to the moment of revenge. Being excluded from something as monumental as my sister's wedding was not just a denial of participation, it was a message that my presence, my feelings, and my bond with my family could be ignored, that my worth was conditional and subject to approval. The sense of injustice settled in slowly, at first as a sting, then as a simmering fire that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about missing a wedding, it was about being stripped of dignity in a space where I had every right to belong. Watching preparations unfold without me, seeing my sister's excitement, my parents' pride, and the laughter of extended family and friends, was like standing outside a window, peering in at a world that had suddenly become inaccessible. The unfairness of it all was palpable, gnawing at my sense of self. This feeling of being wronged transformed every interaction with my family into a delicate dance of hidden frustration and restrained emotion. I couldn't lash out impulsively because the moment for proper impact required patience, calculation, and timing. Every reminder of the wedding, the invitations I wasn't on, the photos being taken, the conversations I wasn't part of, fueled the fire of resentment, but it also sharpened my focus. The injustice wasn't only personal, it was performative, a message from my parents meant to assert control and perhaps shame me into compliance. Recognizing this, I understood that my response had to be equally performative, but on my own terms. It became a matter of reclaiming agency, turning the tables in a way that would be unmistakable, unavoidable, and unforgettable. This intense feeling of injustice, rather than consuming me, became the driving force behind the careful planning of the gift. It informed every decision: what it would be, how it would be presented, the timing, and the ultimate shock it would deliver. Injustice, in its rawest form, can either crush a person or sharpen them, and in this case, it became the catalyst for an action that was meticulously designed to make the family confront their own misjudgment, to experience the emotional upheaval they had inflicted, and to leave a mark that would resonate far beyond the wedding day itself, turning their attempt to diminish me into the very stage for my triumph. The third keynote, sibling relationship, is the complex and often contradictory thread that runs through the story, shaping both emotion and action in ways that are deeply personal and psychologically charged. Growing up alongside a sister creates a bond that is part love, part rivalry, and often part unspoken tension. Our relationship had always been layered with moments of shared joy and moments of quiet resentment, small slights that accumulated over time, and unspoken comparisons that left marks neither of us could fully articulate. The wedding, in many ways, magnified all of this, turning what should have been a celebration of her happiness into a stage for every underlying dynamic to surface. Being banned from attending added a sharp edge to the relationship. It was no longer just about ordinary sibling rivalry, it became about exclusion, control, and perceived favoritism. I had to navigate my feelings carefully, balancing hurt with the need to maintain composure because the stakes were higher than ever. My sister, oblivious to the planning that had begun in secret, remained the center of attention, the focal point of family admiration and celebration. Yet beneath her excitement, our shared history loomed, shaping my perception of how my absence could be felt and how my actions could disrupt the carefully curated image of the day. This complicated relationship was the reason the gift became so critical. It wasn't merely an object or a token, it was a statement, a reflection of all the layers in our bond, designed to speak louder than words. The choice of gift, its presentation, and the timing were all informed by a deep understanding of her personality, her expectations, and the subtle dynamics that had always governed our interactions. In essence, the sibling relationship provided both the motivation and the roadmap for the act of revenge. It dictated how far I could push, what reactions would be most effective, and how the balance of power could shift in a single, unforgettable moment. The emotions tied to this relationship, love, envy, frustration, loyalty, and vindication, intertwined to create a tension that was palpable, almost tangible, influencing every thought, every plan, and every detail of the gift. Without understanding the depth and nuances of our sibling bond, the ultimate impact of the gift would not have been possible, because it was the history between us, the shared experiences and unspoken conflicts, that gave the moment its explosive significance, and ensured that her reaction would be as intense and shocking as the years of suppressed emotion demanded. The fourth keynote, building anticipation, is the subtle art of turning patience, timing, and secrecy into a powerful emotional weapon that elevates the entire story. Anticipation is not simply waiting for an event to happen, it is the careful cultivation of expectation, the tension that coils tighter with every passing moment until the eventual release becomes unforgettable. From the moment I was banned from my sister's wedding, every interaction, every gesture, and every hidden plan contributed to a growing sense of suspense. The family believed that my absence had rendered me powerless, that I would fade into the background, forgotten in the excitement of the celebration. They had no idea that the very act of exclusion was planting the seeds of a surprise they could never have imagined. Building anticipation required observing the smallest details, knowing how my sister would react to certain hints, and understanding how the timing of the gift could maximize its emotional impact. It meant carefully crafting every moment leading up to the reveal so that the eventual shock would be amplified. I had to restrain any impulse to act too soon or reveal even the slightest clue, because anticipation loses its power the moment it is exposed prematurely. Every day leading up to the wedding became part of a mental game, a quiet internal rehearsal of reactions and outcomes, imagining the widening eyes, the sudden intake of breath, and the inevitable scream when the gift was finally unveiled. Even my parents' attempts to control the situation unknowingly contributed to the suspense, because their confidence that I had no influence made the ultimate reveal all the more shocking. Anticipation also operates on multiple layers. the sister's personal expectations, the parents' assumptions about my behavior, and the wider social context of the wedding itself, where every guest becomes an unwitting participant in the unfolding drama. By carefully manipulating these layers, I was able to transform what could have been a simple act of gifting into a moment of heightened emotional intensity. Anticipation turned absence into presence, silence into statement, and invisibility into undeniable impact. It became the force that kept attention tethered to the unseen, the unspoken, and the unknown, creating a sense of inevitability that built quietly but relentlessly until the climax. Without this deliberate cultivation of suspense, the gift would have been ordinary. With it, the moment became a crescendo of emotion, shock, and vindication that no one, not even my sister or parents, could have predicted or prepared for, making the ultimate reaction all the more dramatic and unforgettable. The fifth keynote, the gift mystery, is the heart of the story, the pivotal element that transforms a moment of exclusion into a spectacle of surprise and emotional upheaval. The gift was never intended to be ordinary. It was deliberately chosen and crafted to carry layers of meaning, suspense, and impact. Its very nature needed to be ambiguous, leaving room for interpretation and curiosity, because a gift that is immediately understood loses the power of shock. The mystery lies in what is concealed beneath its surface, in the expectations it sets up and the tension it holds in suspense. Every detail, the wrapping, the presentation, the timing of delivery, was meticulously designed to maintain intrigue, ensuring that my sister and everyone else in the room would anticipate something entirely different from what was inside. The gift became a psychological tool, a silent narrative that spoke volumes without a single word. It carried the weight of the story I had been living, the sense of injustice I had endured, and the subtle revenge I had been plotting from the moment I was banned. By keeping its contents unknown until the precise moment, the gift served as a vessel for the culmination of all my preparation, patience, and planning. The anticipation of the unknown heightened the emotions of everyone involved, creating a charged atmosphere where the eventual reveal would resonate far beyond the simple act of giving. In essence, the gift became a character in its own right within the drama of the wedding, a protagonist whose presence commanded attention, curiosity, and speculation. The audience, my sister, the parents, and even the surrounding guests, were unknowingly invested in deciphering its significance, imagining possibilities, and bracing for the impact. This speculative engagement made the eventual moment of revelation exponentially more powerful, as the contrast between expectation and reality amplified the emotional response. The mystery also served a dual purpose. It allowed me to maintain control over the narrative and to engineer the exact moment of shock and emotional release. Without mystery, the gift would have been a mere object, lacking the potency to elicit a visceral reaction. By embedding layers of ambiguity, anticipation, and meaning, the gift became the ultimate instrument of poetic justice, turning a personal grievance into a moment of unforgettable drama, creating not just a reaction but a story that would be remembered, dissected, and recounted long after the wedding had ended. The sixth keynote, hidden motives, is what gives the story its depth and tension, transforming a simple act of gifting into a carefully orchestrated moment of revelation and emotional upheaval. The gift was not just a present, it was a vessel for intentions that were deliberately concealed, a way to express feelings that could not be spoken aloud without consequence. Every action leading up to it, every word exchanged, and every moment of observation was informed by motives that remained unseen, motives that were quietly calculating, strategic, and precise. At first glance, the gift appeared innocent, perhaps even mundane, the kind of item one might expect at a wedding, which is exactly what made the hidden motive so effective. The surface presented one narrative, while beneath it lay another entirely, a silent commentary on the injustice, the exclusion, and the imbalance of attention and affection that had defined the preceding events. Hidden motives are what create suspense and uncertainty, because no one can predict the full scope of intent until the moment of revelation arrives. This duality between appearance and reality allowed for attention that built steadily, unseen but palpable, affecting the emotions of both the giver and the expected recipient. Planning around hidden motives required careful consideration of timing, audience perception, and psychological impact. Each choice, what the gift would be, how it would be presented, when it would be opened, was influenced by the understanding that the true significance of the action would only be revealed at the critical moment. The brilliance of hidden motives lies in their ability to manipulate expectation, to shape reactions in ways that appear spontaneous but are, in fact, meticulously designed. It also provided a sense of control in a situation where exclusion had initially created a feeling of powerlessness. The hidden motives transformed the moment of giving from a simple social gesture into a silent but powerful assertion of agency, a way to reclaim presence and influence over a narrative from which I had been deliberately removed. These motives were layered, reflecting a combination of emotional satisfaction, poetic justice, and strategic planning, each element reinforcing the other, so that when the gift was finally opened, the impact would be immediate, unmistakable, and unforgettable. It turned what might have been a private grievance into a public and dramatic statement, allowing the silent intentions to speak louder than words and ensuring that the reaction, shock, surprise, perhaps even horror, would resonate far beyond the confines of that single, charged moment, leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. The seventh keynote, emotional rollercoaster, captures the intense and fluctuating feelings that drive the story and make it resonate on a deeply human level. Being banned from my sister's wedding, coupled with the years of complicated family dynamics, set the stage for a storm of emotions that shifted rapidly between anger, frustration, anticipation, and ultimately satisfaction. Each day leading up to the wedding was a mix of simmering resentment and calculated patience, a balancing act between the desire for immediate confrontation and the need to wait for the perfect moment. The emotional roller coaster began with the initial shock of exclusion, a sharp sting that reverberated through every interaction with my family. It was an immediate awareness of unfairness, the sense that I had been deliberately pushed aside and denied participation in an event that should have been shared. That sting evolved into frustration, a lingering dissatisfaction that colored every thought and heightened awareness of every conversation, every plan, and every preparation that I was intentionally left out of. As the gift took shape and the timing for its reveal was plotted, frustration transformed into a tense anticipation, a feeling that was at once exciting and nerve-wracking. The emotional energy built incrementally, like a coil being wound tighter and tighter, each observation, each subtle interaction with the family adding another layer of intensity. Anticipation was interspersed with moments of self-doubt and second-guessing, wondering if the plan would achieve the desired impact, or if it would be dismissed as inconsequential. Yet this tension was part of the process, amplifying the final emotional release. When the gift was finally revealed, the roller coaster reached its climax, and all the restrained energy, all the hidden motives, and all the simmering resentment culminated in a moment of sheer dramatic impact. The shock on my sister's face, the sudden intake of breath, and the audible reaction transformed the entire experience from private frustration into a public spectacle, validating every moment of emotional investment that had preceded it. Even after the immediate reaction, the emotional roller coaster continued, shifting into feelings of vindication, triumph, and subtle amusement, as I reflected on the precision and effectiveness of the plan. The intensity of the emotional journey, from the sting of exclusion to the heights of satisfaction, made the story not just an account of revenge, but a deeply human exploration of the complexities of family, fairness, and the lengths one will go to reclaim agency and leave a lasting impression. The eighth keynote, Timing is Everything, emphasizes how crucial precision and careful planning are in turning a simple act into a moment of maximum impact. In situations charged with emotion, such as being banned from a sister's wedding, the timing of every action can amplify or diminish its significance, transforming a minor gesture into a statement of unforgettable consequence. From the very beginning, the ban created an opportunity not just to react, but to craft a response that would unfold exactly as intended, at the moment when it would be impossible to ignore. The gift itself was meaningless without the carefully chosen moment of its reveal, because impact is rarely measured by the object alone, but by the circumstances surrounding its delivery. Every detail had to be calculated: when to give the gift, how to ensure the family's attention was focused, and how to manipulate the natural flow of the wedding so that the reveal became the undeniable focal point. Timing also required patience and restraint, two qualities that are often tested under emotional pressure. The temptation to reveal the surprise early, to let frustration dictate action, had to be resisted, because doing so would weaken the effect and reduce the emotional resonance of the plan. Understanding the rhythm of the day, The movement of guests and the natural progression of the ceremony or reception allowed for a precise orchestration in which the moment of revelation felt both spontaneous and inevitable. The dramatic tension created by withholding the surprise until the perfect moment ensured that the family's expectations were misdirected, making the eventual outcome all the more shocking. The principle of timing extended beyond mere hours or minutes. It was about understanding emotional readiness, the psychology of anticipation, and the delicate interplay between surprise and expectation. By choosing the precise moment, the gift became more than a present. It became a catalyst, a statement of intent, and a symbol of careful orchestration. Even small delays or premature hints could have undermined the effect, making the difference between an ordinary gesture and a memorable, transformative moment that would linger in the family's memory. Timing is what allowed a single act to shift power, command attention, and elicit reactions that were proportional to the years of exclusion and injustice, turning planning, patience, and observation into instruments of narrative control and emotional impact. It is in the mastery of timing that the full potency of the act is realized, where absence, patience, and anticipation converge to create a moment that no one present could have predicted, ensuring the story would be remembered long after the wedding day. The ninth keynote, shock value, is the element that transforms the careful planning, anticipation, and hidden motives into a moment that is unforgettable, dramatic, and emotionally explosive. Shock value is not merely about surprising someone, it is about delivering an impact so sudden and unexpected that it forces a reaction that is raw, visceral, and undeniable. In the context of being banned from my sister's wedding, the goal was not only to reclaim presence, but to do so in a way that disrupted the narrative my parents had tried to control, creating a moment that could not be ignored or minimized. The gift, carefully constructed and meticulously timed, served as the instrument of that shock. Its appearance, completely ordinary on the surface, misdirected expectations, lulling my sister and the family into a false sense of predictability. By playing on assumptions and familiarity, the eventual reveal hit with full force, intensifying the emotional response and ensuring that the impact was immediate and unmistakable. The effectiveness of shock value relies on the contrast between what is anticipated and what actually occurs. It is the gap between expectation and reality that produces the powerful reaction. For my sister, the scream that followed was not simply an expression of surprise, but a culmination of confusion, disbelief, and emotional overload, a reaction shaped by years of unspoken tensions, rivalry, and unresolved grievances. The shock reverberated through the room, affecting not only the intended recipient, but everyone present, amplifying the significance of the act and cementing its place as the focal point of the wedding. This kind of dramatic reveal requires a deep understanding of human psychology, knowing how people perceive events, how assumptions can be manipulated, and how emotions can be guided toward a predetermined peak. Shock value, in this sense, becomes a tool of empowerment, allowing someone who was excluded to assert influence, command attention, and rewrite the emotional landscape of the event in an instant. The scream, the gasp, or the stunned silence is the external manifestation of this carefully engineered tension finally releasing, a validation of every calculated decision, every withheld clue, and every moment of anticipation. Ultimately, shock value is what elevates the act from a private plan of revenge into a memorable, almost cinematic moment, one that cannot be forgotten, replayed in memory, or dismissed as ordinary. It transforms absence into presence, invisibility into impact, and silence into a statement that resonates far beyond the initial reaction, leaving a permanent impression on everyone involved. The 10th keynote, symbolic justice, is the underlying principle that gives meaning and weight to the act, turning what might otherwise be a simple prank or surprise into a deeply satisfying moment of poetic consequence. Symbolic justice is about creating a balance between the perceived wrongs and the response, ensuring that the action carries an emotional or moral significance that resonates beyond the immediate event. Being banned from my sister's wedding was not just a denial of presence, it was a deliberate assertion of control and judgment, a public statement that my role in the family could be ignored or minimized. Symbolic justice is what allowed that injustice to be addressed in a way that was proportionate, clever, and emotionally resonant. The gift became more than an object, it became a representation of the reversal of power, a tangible embodiment of the lesson that exclusion and control can be challenged and redefined. Every element of the plan, the timing, the presentation, the careful cultivation of anticipation, was designed to maximize this sense of justice, ensuring that the impact would feel earned and meaningful. The act of giving the gift, in this context, was not just about shocking my sister, but about restoring balance to a situation that had been unfair, showing that agency, patience, and insight could overcome the barriers imposed by the family. Symbolic justice also works on multiple levels. On one hand, it addresses the immediate dynamic between my sister and me, creating a memorable moment that reasserts my presence and significance. On another level, it sends a subtle message to the parents and other family members, demonstrating that attempts to control or marginalize can be anticipated and countered with intelligence and foresight. This layering of meaning is what distinguishes symbolic justice from simple revenge. It is not impulsive or vindictive for its own sake, but measured and intentional, carrying a weight that resonates emotionally and psychologically. It also allows for satisfaction that is deeper than fleeting triumph, because it operates in alignment with fairness, consequence, and moral resonance. The act becomes a story, a lesson, and a turning point, where the initial wrong is confronted in a way that is both clever and undeniable. By embedding this principle into the gift and its reveal, the entire experience is transformed from a moment of exclusion into a narrative of empowerment, balance, and recognition, ensuring that the impact is remembered, reflected upon, and emotionally understood by everyone involved, long after the immediate shock has faded. The 11th keynote, parental hypocrisy, is a central layer that adds tension, emotional weight, and dramatic irony to the story, highlighting the contradictions and double standards within family dynamics. Being banned from my sister's wedding was justified by my parents under reasons that seemed logical on the surface: rules, propriety, or family decorum. But the decision was steeped in personal biases, favoritism, and a desire to assert control, revealing a stark hypocrisy in their actions. On one hand, they preached about family unity, love, and support, yet on the other, they actively excluded me from one of the most significant moments in our shared lives, undermining the very principles they claimed to uphold. Observing this contradiction sharpened my awareness of the emotional imbalance in the family and clarified the motive behind the carefully planned gift. The hypocrisy made the exclusion more than a personal slight; it became a reflection of flawed judgment and inconsistent values that demanded acknowledgement. It was impossible to ignore how the same parents who celebrated fairness and equality in other contexts were willing to enforce rules selectively when it suited their preferences. This awareness fueled a desire to address the imbalance in a way that would be unmistakable, to turn their attempt at control into an opportunity for demonstration of both cleverness and justice. The gift, in this context, became a subtle but powerful critique of their inconsistencies. By crafting a surprise that elicited shock and disrupted their expectations, the act exposed the disparity between their ideals and their actions, without the need for direct confrontation or argument. It highlighted that actions have consequences, and that those who attempt to manipulate or control others cannot escape the ripple effects of their decisions. The hypocrisy also intensified the emotional stakes, creating a mix of anticipation, satisfaction, and vindication that made the eventual reveal even more potent. Every parent's glance, every assumption about my compliance, and every expectation that I would fade into the background contributed to the eventual triumph of the plan. By turning parental hypocrisy into a catalyst rather than an obstacle, I was able to orchestrate a response that was both clever and meaningful, transforming a moment of exclusion into one of empowerment and subtle retribution. It became a demonstration of awareness, agency, and strategic intelligence, a way to reflect back the family's contradictions in a single, unforgettable act that resonated with shock, revelation, and the emotional satisfaction of justice. The 12th keynote, planning patience, is the backbone of the story, transforming a raw emotional response into a deliberate strategic act that maximizes impact. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially sparked anger and frustration, emotions that could have led to impulsive reactions or petty outbursts, but the most powerful response required restraint and foresight. Planning became essential, because the goal was not just to express displeasure or hurt feelings, but to engineer a moment that would leave an unforgettable mark on the entire family. Every detail had to be considered: the timing of the gift, the appearance and nature of the gift itself, the expectations of the family, and the psychological impact it would have on my sister and the surrounding audience. Patience was equally crucial, because the strongest reactions are rarely achieved in haste. It required the ability to sit quietly while the wedding preparations unfolded, to watch, observe, and anticipate how every family member would behave, and to resist the urge to reveal even a hint of the plan too soon. The period of waiting was not passive, it was active observation, a mental rehearsal of scenarios, and a careful calibration of every possible outcome. Planning also allowed for contingencies, because even the most carefully orchestrated act can be affected by unforeseen circumstances. By considering alternative reactions, adjusting the timing, and preparing for variables, the eventual reveal became a calculated performance rather than a gamble. The patience required was both psychological and emotional, as it demanded enduring the discomfort of exclusion while maintaining focus on the ultimate goal. It was about channeling negative emotions into a constructive, impactful action, rather than letting frustration dominate behavior. The planning phase was also an exercise in creativity, as the gift needed to be designed to achieve multiple objectives: to shock, to provoke reflection, and to communicate subtle messages about fairness, presence, and agency. Without careful planning, the act could have been dismissed as trivial or inconsequential. Without patience, the timing would have been off, and the emotional resonance would have been lost. By combining meticulous planning with disciplined patience, the exclusion was transformed from a moment of helplessness into an opportunity for empowerment, turning what initially felt like rejection into a stage for triumph. The deliberate, measured approach ensured that every moment leading up to the reveal amplified anticipation, heightened emotional tension, and guaranteed that the ultimate reaction would be both dramatic and unforgettable, cementing the story as one of strategic, calculated, and satisfying revenge. The 13th keynote, foreshadowing tension, is an essential storytelling tool that quietly builds suspense and heightens the emotional stakes, making the eventual reveal of the gift all the more dramatic. Foreshadowing tension is about planting subtle clues and hints that something significant is looming, without revealing the full scope of the plan, creating an undercurrent of anticipation that keeps everyone, including the audience, on edge. From the moment I was banned from my sister's wedding, every interaction, every word, and every small gesture became an opportunity to hint at a response that no one could yet predict. These hints were never overt, they were understated, designed to make the family question their assumptions, feel a flicker of unease, and sense that the absence was not the end of my presence but a prelude to something greater. The tension created through foreshadowing is psychological, operating below the surface of conscious awareness. My sister may have noticed small discrepancies, minor peculiarities, or seemingly casual remarks, but none of these revealed the full plan. Instead, they built an internal narrative of expectation and curiosity, a sense that something was coming that would disrupt the ordinary flow of the wedding. Foreshadowing also served to manipulate attention, subtly guiding the family's focus in ways that would maximize the impact of the ultimate reveal. By creating small moments of uncertainty and curiosity, the tension gradually accumulated, transforming everyday interactions into a silent prelude to the climax. The brilliance of foreshadowing lies in its restraint. The hints must be carefully calibrated, too obvious, and the element of surprise is lost, too subtle, and the emotional buildup is insufficient. Each gesture, glance, or comment was like a thread in a tapestry, weaving an invisible pattern that only revealed its significance when the gift was finally opened. This careful buildup ensured that the release of tension, the shock, the scream, the reaction, would be magnified because it arrived after a period of heightened expectation. The emotional payoff is directly proportional to the tension that has been built, making every second of waiting, every glance, and every subtle interaction part of the story. Foreshadowing tension is what transforms a simple act of giving into a narrative event, turning absence into presence and silence into drama. It ensures that the ultimate moment is not just surprising but deeply satisfying, as the accumulated unease, curiosity, and anticipation converge in a single, unforgettable climax that leaves a lasting impression on everyone involved. The 14th keynote, subtle taunting, is a critical element that adds layers of psychological tension and emotional depth to the story, transforming the period leading up to the reveal into a charged, suspenseful experience. Subtle taunting is not overt aggression or confrontation. Rather, it is a quiet, almost imperceptible method of signaling presence, awareness, and intent, designed to unsettle the family and keep them unknowingly on edge. In the context of being banned from my sister's wedding, subtle taunting allowed me to maintain influence and presence without physically being part of the celebration, turning exclusion into a tool for anticipation and control. These taunts were carefully measured, expressed in small gestures, sly remarks, or carefully crafted actions that hinted at knowledge or capability beyond what the family expected. Each instance was meant to provoke curiosity, anxiety, or a sense of unease, without revealing the full scope of the plan. Subtlety was essential because overt taunting could have backfired, drawing attention to intentions prematurely or provoking defensive reactions that might undermine the carefully constructed surprise. Instead, the goal was to create a lingering tension, a quiet psychological pressure that made the family question their assumptions, underestimate me, and at the same time, subconsciously prepare for the impact that would eventually arrive. These moments of subtle taunting functioned as breadcrumbs, leading the family along a path of speculation and unease, each hint carefully positioned to maximize the eventual shock when the gift was revealed. The taunting also served as a form of empowerment, allowing me to assert agency in a situation where I was ostensibly powerless. It created a sense of control and influence, demonstrating that absence did not equate to irrelevance, and that every action, no matter how small, could have consequence. On a deeper level, subtle taunting amplified the emotional rollercoaster, maintaining tension while delaying gratification and ensuring that the eventual release would carry maximum impact. The combination of mystery, anticipation, and understated provocation heightened the psychological stakes, turning the period of exclusion into an interactive, suspenseful experience in which the family became unwitting participants in their own unraveling. In the end, subtle taunting was more than mischief. It was a strategic tool, a psychological maneuver, and a way to transform an act of exclusion into a carefully orchestrated performance of influence and emotional power. It set the stage for the gift's revelation, ensuring that when the moment finally came, the impact was both dramatic and unforgettable, resonating far beyond the immediate reaction and leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved. The 15th keynote, audience reaction, is a crucial aspect that elevates the story from a private act of revenge into a dramatic shared experience that resonates far beyond the personal sphere. In any high-stakes emotional moment, the reaction of those witnessing the event is as important as the act itself, because it validates the effort, amplifies the impact, and turns a calculated gesture into a memorable, almost theatrical performance. Being banned from my sister's wedding placed me in a position of invisibility, yet the careful planning of the gift and its eventual reveal created a situation where the audience, family members, friends, and other guests became integral to the unfolding drama. Their reactions were unpredictable yet essential. The collective gasp, wide-eyed surprise, murmurs of disbelief, and the shock on my sister's face all contributed to the emotional weight of the moment. Each reaction served as a mirror, reflecting the intensity, cleverness, and significance of the act. By understanding the dynamics of the audience, their expectations, assumptions, and loyalties, I was able to anticipate how they would respond, which allowed for precise orchestration of timing, presentation, and suspense. The audience's engagement transformed the private act into a shared spectacle, amplifying feelings of triumph, vindication, and poetic justice. Their reactions also reinforced the effectiveness of subtle psychological elements, such as hidden motives, foreshadowing, and carefully cultivated anticipation, making the climax more powerful and emotionally resonant. Moreover, witnessing the impact on others, especially those who had dismissed or underestimated me, created an additional layer of satisfaction. The audience became both participants and witnesses, their emotions validating the careful strategy behind the act, and their astonishment serving as a tangible measure of the effectiveness of the planning. This dynamic emphasizes that revenge, when executed thoughtfully, is not solely about satisfying personal feelings of injustice but also about demonstrating awareness, intelligence, and control in a way that is undeniable and publicly recognized. Audience reaction magnifies the emotional resonance, turning a personal grievance into a communal experience that commands attention and leaves a lasting impression. The collective shock, curiosity, and fascination of those present contribute to the story's power, ensuring that the act of giving the gift is not a fleeting moment but a lasting memory etched in the minds of everyone who witnessed it, creating an enduring narrative of cleverness, suspense, and triumph that extends far beyond the immediate event itself. The 16th keynote, unexpected outcomes, is what turns a carefully planned act from a personal statement into a moment of pure, dramatic consequence, elevating the story beyond mere preparation and anticipation. No matter how meticulously a plan is crafted, part of its power lies in the ways in which the reactions and results exceed expectations, creating surprises not just for the recipient but for everyone present. In the context of being banned from my sister's wedding, the exclusion itself seemed final and absolute, leaving little room for influence or recognition. Yet the hidden planning, the carefully timed gift, and the layers of suspense were designed to invert this perceived helplessness into a climactic triumph. The gift's reveal carried an element of unpredictability because while I had anticipated certain reactions, human emotion is fluid, and the way my sister, the parents, and other guests responded could never be entirely controlled. That uncertainty added an electrifying tension in the moments leading up to the unveiling, heightening the stakes and making the eventual outcome all the more impactful. Unexpected outcomes amplify the drama because they often go beyond what the audience or even the planner imagines. The shock on my sister's face, the gasp from surrounding family members, and the sudden realization among my parents that the narrative they had tried to control had been upended all created a ripple effect of astonishment that extended far beyond the immediate act. The brilliance of this keynote is that it embraces unpredictability while still maintaining a structured approach. It allows for moments that feel spontaneous and organic, even though they are the result of careful strategy. Unexpected outcomes also serve as emotional catalysts, transforming tension, anticipation, and even subtle taunting into tangible reactions that validate the effort and ingenuity of the plan. This element reinforces the story's power by demonstrating that, even in situations where one is excluded or underestimated, the combination of strategy, timing, and psychological insight can create moments that surpass expectations and leave a lasting impression. The unpredictability heightens the stakes for everyone involved, making the narrative more memorable and compelling. Because the reactions cannot be rehearsed or anticipated fully, ensuring that the climax resonates with authenticity and intensity. In essence, unexpected outcomes are the dramatic payoff of all preceding planning, patience, and subtle maneuvering, turning exclusion into influence, anticipation into astonishment, and a private sense of injustice into a public, unforgettable spectacle that leaves everyone involved stunned, reflective, and forever impacted by the carefully orchestrated reversal of expectations. The 17th keynote, Empowerment Through Action, is the transformative force that shifts the story from one of helplessness and exclusion into a narrative of agency, control, and self-assertion. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially created a sense of powerlessness, a situation in which the decisions and control of others seemed absolute, leaving me on the sidelines both physically and emotionally. However, the act of carefully planning the gift and orchestrating its reveal became a tool to reclaim influence and assert presence in a space from which I had been deliberately excluded. Empowerment through action is not merely about retaliation, it is about reclaiming one's narrative, demonstrating that absence does not equal irrelevance, and that perceived limitations can be transformed into opportunities for impact. By taking deliberate steps, designing the gift, timing its reveal, and cultivating anticipation, I was able to convert frustration and injustice into purposeful, strategic behavior that commanded attention and respect. Each stage of the process reinforced a sense of control, the patience required to wait, the precision in planning, and the subtle manipulation of expectation, all served as exercises in self-determination, showing that even in a context dominated by others, influence and agency could be regained through deliberate action. This empowerment is psychological as much as it is practical. The realization that I could craft a moment that would elicit shock, awe, and attention from both my sister and the wider audience instilled confidence and reaffirmed personal strength. It shifted the dynamic from passive observation to active participation, turning the narrative of exclusion into a platform for self-expression and assertion. Action, in this context, also becomes symbolic, transforming the gift from a mere object into an instrument of personal power, conveying messages of justice, cleverness, and the ability to influence events despite prior marginalization. The reactions of my sister, parents, and other guests validated this empowerment, confirming that calculated, thoughtful actions could produce measurable, meaningful impact. In essence, empowerment through action demonstrates that even when circumstances seem restrictive, deliberate strategic behavior allows one to reclaim authority over the narrative, turning adversity into opportunity. The act of orchestrating the gift's reveal embodies this principle, proving that influence and presence can be asserted creatively and decisively, and that moments of exclusion can be transformed into stages for triumph. This empowerment resonates not only in the immediate reactions, but in the lasting memory of having reshaped expectations and demonstrated agency in a situation where control initially seemed impossible. The 18th keynote, the gift's dual nature, is what gives the story its dramatic complexity, turning a single object into a vehicle for both surprise and emotional resonance. A gift is traditionally seen as a gesture of affection or celebration, something meant to delight or honor the recipient. But in this story, it carried a hidden dimension, embodying both innocence and subversion simultaneously. On the surface, it appeared ordinary, perhaps even thoughtful, blending seamlessly into the context of a wedding and lulling my sister and the family into a sense of expectation consistent with social norms. This outward appearance was intentional, designed to mask the underlying intentions and create a stark contrast between expectation and reality. Beneath the surface, however, the gift contained layers of meaning and consequence that were carefully crafted to provoke shock, elicit strong emotional reactions, and deliver a form of poetic justice. The dual nature lies in this tension between what is seen and what is hidden, between the conventional role of a wedding present and the subversive power it carries when revealed at the precise moment. This contrast amplifies the impact, transforming a simple act of giving into a performance with dramatic weight. It also reflects the intricate balance of subtlety and strategy, because a gift that is overtly threatening, humorous, or shocking from the outset would have diminished the element of surprise and lessened its emotional potency. The duality allows for multiple layers of engagement. My sister experiences immediate shock and disbelief. The parents confront the unforeseen consequences of their exclusionary decision. And the audience, witnessing the event unfold, grapples with a mix of astonishment, amusement, and admiration for the clever orchestration. The dual nature also symbolizes the broader narrative of the story, the contrast between exclusion and assertion, absence and impact, restraint and explosive revelation. It turns the gift into more than a physical object. It becomes a narrative device, a statement of agency, and a vessel through which emotions, intentions, and lessons are communicated simultaneously. By leveraging this duality, the moment of the gift's opening achieves maximum dramatic effect, creating a memorable and emotionally charged climax that resonates on multiple levels. The audience is left processing both the surface-level gesture and the deeper implications of what has been revealed, making the act of giving the gift not just a reaction to exclusion, but a transformative, defining moment that shapes perceptions, elicits emotional responses, and leaves a lasting imprint on the family dynamic. The 19th keynote, Sister's Shock, is the emotional climax of the story, the moment when all the careful planning, anticipation, and hidden intentions converge into a single, unforgettable reaction. The shock is not simply about surprise, it is the culmination of years of complex sibling dynamics, subtle rivalries, unspoken grievances, and the immediate context of being banned from the wedding. It is a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and intense emotional release, amplified by the stark contrast between what my sister expected and what she actually experienced. From the moment I was excluded, she may have assumed that my absence rendered me powerless, that I would fade into the background without leaving a mark. The carefully orchestrated gift disrupted that assumption entirely. The shock on her face reflected the sudden realization that the narrative she believed was complete, the wedding proceeding without me as a participant, was in fact being rewritten in real time. Her scream or audible reaction was the external manifestation of internal turmoil, a visceral expression of emotions that had been caught off guard and left unprepared. This response also carried layers of psychological complexity. It was surprise at the unexpected contents of the gift, amazement at the timing and precision of the reveal, and perhaps even a recognition of the cleverness and intentionality behind the act. The impact of her shock was magnified by the audience, whose own reactions, gasps, whispers, or laughter reinforced the significance of the moment and heightened its emotional resonance. It was not just a private experience but a shared event, where her response validated the effectiveness of the planning, the subtle taunts, the anticipation, and the hidden motives that had preceded it. Her shock also served as a form of poetic justice, reflecting the reversal of roles, where she and the family had assumed control and dominance by excluding me. The revelation of the gift disrupted that power dynamic entirely, forcing acknowledgement of both my presence and my influence. The intensity of the shock ensured that the act would be remembered long after the wedding, transforming what could have been a moment of exclusion and frustration into a scene of triumph, assertion, and emotional satisfaction. It underscores the dramatic payoff of strategic planning, timing, and subtle psychological manipulation, turning the sisters' reaction into the apex of narrative tension and providing the ultimate emotional catharsis for the story as a whole, leaving a lasting impression on everyone involved and cementing the moment as unforgettable. The 20th keynote, Vindication, is the moment when all the tension, frustration, and careful planning come together to deliver a profound sense of justice and personal triumph. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially left me feeling powerless, humiliated, and erased from an event that should have celebrated family and shared bonds. Vindication transforms that feeling into emotional and psychological empowerment, turning exclusion and injustice into an opportunity to reclaim authority and demonstrate agency. It is not merely about revenge, it is about proving, through action rather than words, that the assumptions made by my parents and sister regarding my absence were not only mistaken, but also underestimating my intelligence, patience, and ability to influence outcomes despite being sidelined. The act of giving the gift and orchestrating its precise reveal created a situation where the entire family, and especially my sister, could no longer ignore my presence or dismiss my capability. Vindication comes from the recognition, whether implicit or explicit, that the careful effort and strategy behind the gift were deliberate, calculated, and effective, demonstrating that the initial exclusion could not diminish my influence or significance. The emotional satisfaction of vindication is intensified by the dramatic tension that preceded the reveal. The anticipation, the hidden motives, and the subtle psychological maneuvers all culminate in a single, powerful moment where the injustice is confronted and overturned. It is also amplified by the reactions of the sister and family, whose shock, confusion, and astonishment serve as confirmation that the plan achieved its intended impact. Vindication is particularly potent because it operates on multiple levels. On a personal level, it restores a sense of self-worth and agency that was challenged by the exclusion. On a relational level, it reasserts boundaries, demonstrates cleverness, and subtly reminds the family of the consequences of underestimating or marginalizing me. The feeling of being recognized, in effect, validates not only the effort put into the planning, but also the patience, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence required to execute the plan successfully. In this sense, vindication is both a reward and a statement, a resolution that balances the scales of perceived injustice while leaving a lasting impression. It is the emotional apex of the story, the moment when frustration, anticipation, and tension transform into triumph, closure, and undeniable acknowledgement, turning what initially felt like exclusion into a memorable and empowering demonstration of presence, capability, and resilience that resonates far beyond the immediate event. The 21st keynote, Family Dynamics Shift, is a critical element that illustrates how a single, well-orchestrated act can alter the relationships and emotional balance within a family. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially positioned me as an outsider, creating an implicit hierarchy in which my presence was minimized and my influence dismissed. This exclusion reinforced certain dynamics, where my parents' control and my sister's prominence dominated the event, and my role was temporarily erased. The strategic planning and eventual reveal of the gift disrupted this established order, creating a shift in perception, awareness, and emotional weight among all family members. Family dynamics are often delicate, layered with unspoken rules, roles, and expectations, and the act of exclusion had temporarily reinforced one version of these dynamics. By intervening through a carefully designed gift, I was able to challenge assumptions, reveal capabilities that had been underestimated, and subtly reassert my significance within the family structure. This shift does not necessarily come from confrontation or argument. It emerges through the psychological and emotional impact of the action itself. When my sister opened the gift and reacted with shock, The previous narrative of absence and powerlessness was instantly reframed. Suddenly, I was not just a peripheral figure, but an agent capable of influence, capable of controlling attention, and capable of creating consequences that affected everyone present. The parents, who had attempted to assert control through exclusion, were confronted with the unexpected reversal, forcing them to reconsider assumptions about authority, compliance, and the potential outcomes of their actions. This transformation extends beyond immediate reactions. Relationships within the family are reshaped because perceptions of trust, respect, and capability are recalibrated. Subtle power dynamics shift, and the story of the wedding becomes not just about celebration, but about the demonstration of agency and the acknowledgement of previously underestimated abilities. The shift also highlights the broader concept that family interactions are not static. They can be influenced by strategic action, timing, and insight into interpersonal behavior. The gift, while a single object, catalyzed this change, proving that even in environments where control seems centralized or exclusion seems permanent, well-planned, thoughtful acts can create ripple effects that alter emotional hierarchies, redefine perceptions, and leave a lasting mark on family dynamics. In essence, the family dynamics shift is both a consequence and a reward, turning an initial disadvantage into a powerful demonstration of influence, awareness, and strategic presence within a previously rigid system of relationships. The 22nd keynote, psychological satisfaction, is a profound element that highlights the inner emotional payoff of the entire sequence of events, demonstrating that revenge, when executed thoughtfully, is as much about internal fulfillment as it is about external impact. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially created a complex mix of emotions: anger, hurt, frustration, and a sense of injustice. These feelings, left unchecked, could have festered into resentment or bitterness, but the carefully orchestrated gift transformed that negative energy into purposeful action, providing a path toward psychological resolution. The satisfaction comes from the awareness that the plan was conceived with precision, patience, and strategic foresight, turning a moment of exclusion into an opportunity to assert influence, reclaim agency, and make a meaningful statement without resorting to overt confrontation. Every detail, the timing of the gift, its dual nature, the suspense built through subtle foreshadowing, and the ultimate shock it elicited, was designed to maximize both external impact and internal gratification, ensuring that the act was not just performative but personally rewarding. Psychological satisfaction is deeply tied to the realization that the reactions of my sister, parents, and other family members validated the intelligence, creativity, and intentionality behind the plan. Witnessing their astonishment, surprise, and emotional upheaval created a sense of triumph, a confirmation that the energy invested in planning, patience, and strategic execution had achieved its purpose. Unlike immediate, impulsive revenge, which may offer a fleeting sense of gratification, the satisfaction derived here is enduring because it is tied to forethought, skill, and the successful navigation of complex emotional terrain. It is also amplified by the alignment between motive and outcome. The exclusion initially imposed a sense of powerlessness, yet through careful orchestration, that limitation was transformed into a moment of control and emotional resonance. This sense of fulfillment goes beyond mere vindication. It is the internal recognition that one's actions were deliberate, meaningful, and effective, creating a narrative in which agency is reclaimed and perceived injustices are addressed creatively. The psychological satisfaction also reinforces personal resilience and emotional intelligence, demonstrating the ability to channel hurt into constructive, impactful action. It underscores the idea that strategic planning, emotional awareness, and timing can convert adversity into empowerment, leaving the planner with not only a memorable story but a lasting sense of achievement, control, and closure that resonates long after the wedding day has ended. The 23rd keynote, public versus private drama, is a critical element that highlights the contrast between internal emotions and external perceptions, and how orchestrating an act in a public setting can magnify its impact. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially placed the conflict entirely in the private sphere, a personal sense of exclusion, frustration, and hurt that could have remained unacknowledged or suppressed. The wedding itself, however, was a public event, filled with family, friends, and other guests, providing a stage where emotions, surprises, and reactions would be observed, amplified, and remembered. Distinction between private grievance and public revelation is essential because it transforms the act from a simple personal statement into a shared experience with lasting consequences. The private drama, my feelings of exclusion, the years of sibling rivalry, and the subtle resentment that built up over time, was carefully channeled into a strategic act designed for a public audience. By doing so, the private tension was externalized in a way that created maximum visibility, emotional resonance, and dramatic effect. The gift, initially a symbol of private preparation and intent, became the vehicle through which the private conflict was projected into the public sphere, turning personal feelings into a spectacle that could not be ignored. The reactions of my sister, parents, and attending guests served to amplify the moment, providing validation, recognition, and emotional weight that would have been absent had the act occurred in private. Public exposure also added layers of accountability and social consequence, because the family's assumptions, biases, and attempts at control were revealed and challenged in front of witnesses. The interplay between private and public drama heightened suspense, anticipation, and tension, making the eventual reveal more impactful. The private planning, patience, and subtle psychological maneuvers created a controlled environment in which the public reaction could unfold in a predictable yet emotionally charged way. This dynamic ensured that the act of revenge was not only effective but memorable, because it engaged multiple layers of perception and emotion simultaneously. By bridging the private and public dimensions, the story becomes richer, more dramatic, and more satisfying, as it allows internal feelings of injustice to be expressed, acknowledged, and validated on a broader stage. The public nature of the reveal magnifies every reaction, every gasp, and every moment of shock, transforming what began as a personal grievance into a socially significant moment that redefines relationships, asserts presence, and leaves a lasting impression on both the family and the wider audience. The 24th keynote, the element of surprise, is one of the most powerful tools in the story, transforming anticipation, planning, and subtle psychological maneuvers into a moment that leaves an indelible impact on everyone involved. Surprise works because it disrupts expectations, challenges assumptions, and creates an immediate emotional reaction that cannot be fully anticipated or controlled by the recipient. In the context of being banned from my sister's wedding, the element of surprise was crucial to overturning the narrative of exclusion and asserting presence in a space where I had been intentionally marginalized. The gift, carefully crafted and strategically timed, served as the perfect conduit for this surprise. On the surface, it appeared ordinary, almost mundane, blending into the social fabric of the wedding and lulling my sister, the parents, and the guests into assumptions that nothing significant would occur. This deception amplified the eventual impact, because the contrast between expectation and reality heightened the intensity of the reaction. Surprise is emotional as much as it is cognitive, producing a mixture of shock, disbelief, confusion, and awe that resonates immediately and lingers long after the initial moment. The power of the surprise in this story was enhanced by the careful orchestration of preceding elements: anticipation, hidden motives, subtle taunts, and psychological manipulation, creating an emotional buildup that made the reveal unavoidable yet still unexpected. It also leveraged timing, positioning, and context, ensuring that the moment would occur when attention was focused, and reactions would be most visible and meaningful. The element of surprise also works on multiple layers. It affected my sister personally, forced the parents to confront the limits of their control, and captivated the audience of guests who witnessed the unfolding drama. Each reaction reinforced the effectiveness of the planning and the subtlety of the approach, amplifying the sense of triumph and emotional satisfaction. Surprise transforms a calculated act from being merely clever into being unforgettable, creating a moment that dominates attention, elicits raw emotion, and leaves a lasting imprint on memory. It turns absence into presence, silence into a statement, and exclusion into influence. The unpredictability inherent in the surprise ensures that the impact is felt not only in the immediate reactions but in the broader social and emotional dynamics of the event, reshaping perceptions and leaving a story that will be recounted, analyzed, and remembered long after the wedding concludes. In essence, the element of surprise is the engine that converts careful planning and subtle tension into a dramatic, memorable, and emotionally resonant climax, solidifying the story's lasting impact. The 25th keynote, lasting impact, is the culmination of all the preceding elements, representing how a single act, carefully planned and executed, can create effects that endure far beyond the immediate moment of the wedding. While the surprise, shock, and emotional release are powerful in themselves, the true significance of the story lies in the way it reshapes relationships, perceptions, and memories within the family for the long term. Being banned from my sister's wedding initially felt like a temporary act of exclusion, a momentary erasure of my presence, but the strategic gift transformed what could have been a fleeting grievance into an enduring statement. Lasting impact is achieved through a combination of planning, timing, psychological insight, and emotional resonance, all of which work together to ensure that the reactions elicited, whether shock, astonishment, or reflection, continue to influence the way the family interacts and perceives each other after the event. The gift itself becomes a symbol, a tangible reminder of agency, cleverness, and the ability to assert oneself even in the face of marginalization. Its effects ripple outward, altering assumptions about power, attention, and influence within the family dynamic. For my sister, the immediate shock evolves into a memory that will be revisited and reconsidered over time, shaping the way she interprets future interactions and reminding her that appearances can be deceiving and that underestimated individuals can command influence in unexpected ways. For the parents, the lasting impact is equally profound, forcing them to confront the consequences of exclusion and control, and prompting a reassessment of how their decisions affect relationships and emotional balance. The audience of wedding guests also plays a role, because witnessing the event embeds the moment in collective memory, making it not only a personal triumph, but a shared story that will be recounted, analyzed, and reflected upon for months or years to come. Lasting impact is not merely about the immediate emotional highs of surprise or shock, it is about the narrative shift, the recalibration of respect and perception, and the enduring reminder that strategy, patience, and intelligence can overcome exclusion and assert influence. It reinforces the themes of empowerment, vindication, and subtle poetic justice, ensuring that the story is not confined to a single fleeting moment but continues to shape understanding, relationships, and emotional awareness. In essence, lasting impact transforms an act of revenge into a story with permanence, turning temporary exclusion into enduring presence and leaving a legacy that will resonate in memory, conversation, and family dynamics long after the wedding day has passed. In conclusion, what began as a moment of exclusion, a ban from my sister's wedding, transformed into a story of patience, strategy, and thoughtful action. Every step, from planning the gift and timing its reveal, to anticipating reactions and embracing the element of surprise, was a way to reclaim agency, assert presence, and turn feelings of powerlessness into a moment of undeniable impact. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about demonstrating resilience, cleverness, and the power of subtle, meaningful action. It shows that even in situations where we feel overlooked or underestimated, careful planning, emotional awareness, and courage can turn adversity into a lasting statement, leaving a mark that will be remembered long after the event has passed. To my sister, my parents, and everyone who witnessed this moment, I hope it serves as a reminder that every action, no matter how small, carries weight and meaning. And to all of you here today, thank you for listening, for sharing in this story, and for recognizing the effort, thought, and emotion behind it. Good luck to everyone pursuing their own paths and moments of personal triumph. May you find the strength, patience, and wisdom to turn challenges into opportunities, and may you always act with intention, courage, and heart. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this unforgettable journey.